Tibet for a free China. The freedom of our companions in Tibet is very important. If we're to also arrive at the freedom of the Chinese people, the Dalai Lama doesn't want independence anymore, but he wants autonomy for Tibet. But somehow people are scared. It is the Chinese who are scared, to feel that it is their duty to dominate almost 1 billion people. This demonstrates the fact that any ideas that we can actually flesh out in practice are dangerous to people who rely on violence to enforce their own interests.
We, of course, try to explain to our Chinese counterpart that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is not seeking separation and independence, but the Chinese government continues to allege that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is engaged in separatist activities. We are appealing to the international community to use its good offices and to exert pressure on the Chinese government to encourage and persuade the Chinese government to rethink its position on Tibet.
Kenya is probably at the same state that the United States was at the end of their civil war. If the right buttons are pressed and if the right pressure is put, it is actually a success story waiting to happen. Accountability and the rule of law is all about speaking truth to power. And most of the times, governments don't like when the truth is spoken to them.
Our history always showing how we were victims of dictatorship. Fortunately, in the end, the Iraqi people, now they are free. Now the time comes to Iraqi people to take their place with other nations, with their own neighbors, for peace, for democracy.
In Kurdistan, hundreds of thousands of people were perished, massacred, and deported. We have common grounds and we have common tears. In Iraq, there is a will of a people, and that's the brightest side of our nation, is for a better tomorrow, for a better society, for a more just society.
Very frequently, historically acquired rights aren't even defended. Since the non-violent struggle is one we always try to wage, we try to not to defeat people, but to convince people. And we're very pleased that we were able to mobilize the public opinion parliaments throughout the world and to help the governments of the European Union. The central principle for us is that of indivisibility of human rights, so that we can give rights to the victims, get rid of impunity, get rid of the principle of sovereignty. We want a rule of law, we want democracy, we want to help Arab democrats everywhere.
We're missing today allies that we had a few years ago. And if we try to see where are the friends that we lost, they're mainly in Africa and Latin America. We should deal with the UN as it is. They are rogue states that we don't like, that undermine human rights, challenge the universality all the time. But there are lots of swing voters. And instead of saying we only want to have the good guys that are already part of the group, we should rather focus on convincing those in the middle, those swing voters, and get them back.
We are now only asked for the Vietnamese government to treat our people as their own citizen and reconsider our indigenous people, Matinyard, Dega indigenous people, as their own citizen. There is no way in the world we want to separate country with Vietnam or to ask for independence.
Buddhism is not just a religion, but rather a principle with a tradition of non-violence, compassion, and commitment to social justice. In Buddhist teaching, we find values which are equivalent to those in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. If we want to promote human rights and democracy in Asia, it's essential to support Buddhists fighting peacefully for this cause. Europe has a very important role to play in the years to come. Thanks to Europe, we've been able to avoid human rights being trampled upon, reinforcing European presence on the African continent. Africa needs political stability. It doesn't need simply business investment. We should continue to take action there against the death penalty.
If we just managed to save a single human life, that would be worth the effort. If Europe wants to become a credible player in the international arena, we need a foreign relations and defence policy, and we should put in this the element of human rights and citizens' rights.
The coming year is important for Vietnam. Vietnam is going to be examined before the United Nations under what's called the Universal Periodic Review. It's a system in which governments examine governments. We have a list of very important questions we would like to ask Vietnam. I think the thing now is to find governments in Europe or in other parts of the world who will help us to raise these questions when Vietnam comes before the United Nations, because Vietnam is counting on this examination to tell the world that they have no human rights problems in Vietnam.
We are having elections at the end of March, presidential elections. We had already parliamentary elections, and democracy is being consolidated, in the Somaliland. Support should be given to African countries as far as international trade and markets are concerned, training, education, promotion of good governance, capacity building, all should be encouraged, Mr. Chairman, to have established a bright future for Africa.
Human rights and the workers' rights issue in China is closely related to the interests of this Western world. The human rights and the economy are closely related. If we do not solve this trade imbalance problem, then the small and even medium business in Europe will be going bankruptcy, and this imbalance of trade will be increased. Of course, the European problem cannot be solely solved by government in Rome or government in Berlin. It has to be solved in the whole scope of the European Union.
If a transnational party can exist, it has to attract especially the people who live in those regions of the world where there is no freedom, where the concept itself of freedom is forbidden. We have a party which had 3 women at the top functions. And these 3 women, on that first occasion, were elected and came to the parliament. Maybe we were lucky, but for God's sake, we did something. It's not just luck. We must be different.
The Syrians are lost, and all the Syrians all over the world have a dream. They want to live in peace. They would like to be recognized as a civilization, and those who live together with the other religions and other peoples must be able to benefit of human rights and should be treated equally as all the other human beings.
Economic development do not help to improve the human rights violation. In contrary, have become a tool to create more suffering. A country development must not be based on how the very few powerful people become rich and leaving so many people become poor.
I have tried to open up the eyes of our members. We have to go and see beyond Europe because we are a bit Europa-centric. We only think about Europe. We will have to impose democracy in China. This is the future challenge. We have a common interest. They need us and we need them.
The radical parties should have the ambition to reform foreign policy. Here we are talking about a conception of international relations and foreign policies which are closer to the cartels of Colombian drug trafficking rather than the rule of law and international right. European governments should ask China to implement its own laws rather than making declarations on human rights on the one hand and business on the other hand.